Today I'll be talking about Rent, the 2005 film version directed by Christopher Columbus, inspired by the 1990s play of the same name. As a quick note, I haven't seen the musical of the same name this movie's based on, but I felt compelled to make a review of this movie after seeing a movie critic whose videos I enjoy watching break down just why she hates this movie and its original source material. The thoughts in this review are comprised of my response to her video, which I'll link in my description, my initial thoughts and experiences of watching this movie for the very first time back in the mid to late 2000s, and watching the movie again in recent times, both with and without the commentary. So how does the movie start? Well, normally I don't cover this section, but the production studio's logo cracked me up since it's 1492 pictures and the director is Chris Columbus. I know it's intentional, but it still makes me laugh. We see that Rosario Dawson and Idina Menzel are going to be in this movie, so Pluto Nash and Frozen together at last. Idina Menzel is one of many actors who reprised their thespian roles from the original production of Rent back when it was just a musical. And Rosario Dawson is one of the two new main characters, and she is a welcome addition. I particularly enjoy her character of Mimi in this movie. And it turns out that Collins is also a returning cast member, but I just know him as that guy from Law and Order. And the role of Joanne is played by someone new, but she has a beautiful voice as seen in the opening number, Seasons of Love. And this was one part where having the critics note of moving up the number that opens Act 2 to the beginning of the movie was a bit of a weird choice, since it imparts that a year has passed even though you've just started watching the movie. And fair point, but thankfully, Seasons of Love is one of the best, if not the best, songs in this production. And I always remembered it as that 525,602nd song that my sister used to sing. And truthfully, this movie is a bit of a nostalgic one for me. Onward we go. One of the more poignant lines of the next song, which appears pretty fast after the opening one, is, "How do you document real life when real life is becoming more like fiction each day?" And sometimes I wonder if the actors were in possession of a crystal ball just to illustrate how chaotic life was going to turn out. And this is also where everyone's forced to pay a year's worth of rent after being promised exemption from that rent. And it turns out their former friend Benny sold out, apparently, and was bought by the man, as everyone always does. And I understand that there's plight in the we have to pay 1 year's rent in 1 day situation. But did these people seriously think they're going to skate by for an entire year without paying rent and not having a blow up in their face? And this is coming from someone who honestly loves this movie. Truthfully, I adore this movie, and I would love to see the musical. And there are several messages that really tap into some struggles that I have had previously and still currently have. That being said, there are some fundamental parts of this movie that are hard to take seriously. And based on my knowledge of the musical, the message didn't change crucially in adaptation from the little stage to the silver screen. So you can't even blame it on the changing into film aspect. It really digs truly from the horse's mouth of the musical. So after flaming trash cans are thrown from many stories above in the entire lot, and yes, that really happens, we meet Collins as he gets mugged by a bunch of terrible people. I mean, we don't really know anything else about them. We just know that they're terrible. And thankfully, he meets Angel in the process, who is a true angel, aside from the wings and the white robe. And Angel takes care of Collins and makes sure he's doing okay. And he's sick and out in the cold. It's like Christmas time. And they share that they both suffer from AIDS. And we come back to the main characters, Mark and Roger, who are sharing an apartment that they can't afford the rent on. And we find out that Mark's ex-girlfriend Maureen left him for a woman. Joanne, in fact, with the beautiful voice in the opening number. And the final main character is Mimi, Rosario Dawson's protege, who is a dancer at the Cat Scratch Club with her own deep and dark secrets. And she lusts after Roger, but Roger is scared because his ex-girlfriend with similar secrets killed herself in the bathtub. Charming stuff, I know. One of the things I appreciate about this movie is the grittiness it shows. It doesn't pretend like these people have it easy. And Mark is a budding filmmaker who's looking to make it out there on his own rent, but he needs to sacrifice part of his soul to work for a semi-sleazy news organization that reeks of BuzzFeed or TMZ. And Maureen just wants to feel loved and is adapting to her bisexuality, something which was hardly addressed then and is still rarely seen now. And I'm in agreement with the movie critic here in the sense that she is more the stereotypical bisexual in movies. But nonetheless, she's present and her character is bearable, mostly. Her girlfriend Joanne is charming and is very fun, particularly in the Tango Maureen number she shares with Mark. And by the way, the visual style of that song in this movie is impeccable. And Mimi has serious drug addiction issues and is working through AIDS, and AIDS also impacts Roger in addition to the Collins and Angel mentioned, earlier. And that being said, it spends a large chunk of the time dedicated to the first trio mentioned, the love triangle of people that don't have AIDS. And their conflicts are easier to resolve on their own time, whereas everyone else is dying a slow and inevitable and miserable death from AIDS. It wouldn't be such a big deal if that was the case, except this movie prides itself on being revolutionary and fighting the man for bringing the AIDS down upon them. And for a movie that's supposed to deal with the turmoil and awfulness associated with AIDS, some of the people impacted seem peaceful about everything. And frankly, that's disturbing. The main issue I have with this is an Angel's character. And to borrow language from the movie critic, they're more of a spirit guide, as opposed to a fleshed out and human character. An Angel's a drag queen, but there isn't much else to say about them. And they're just there for moral support and to sing a song about killing a dog for a bucket load of money. And yes, that really happens too. Something else I appreciate about this movie, though, is the music. It's enjoyable. It gets stuck in your head for weeks on end. I've played this soundtrack in my apartment while working on jigsaw puzzles frequently. And it really taps into the characters and their struggles. And even if the lyrics are a tad risque, you'll find yourself humming along and saying the most absurd of things as you practice for your next night out doing karaoke. And aside from the two cornerstone songs, La Vie Boheme and Seasons of Love, I particularly enjoy the song Out Tonight and howling like a wolf when they stretch the word out. And I will take the time to say you shouldn't take your little kids to see this musical, especially with all the grown-up content. And not to say that I don't mind, but don't say I didn't warn you. And let's talk about the Over the Moon song. One of Maureen's main conflicts, her main conflict really, is keeping her performance space. Well, she's planning a protest at her space, and she puts together the Over the Moon song. And to say it's kooky would be an understatement, but she pretends to be a cow and sings an entire song that makes it sound like her life is the animal farm of New York City. Yes, that animal farm. And also, she talks about a suicidal Mickey Mouse. That's a hard image to picture and frankly a little weird. Then at some point, she gets everyone to moo with her, but then she ends up mooning the audience, including the cops and rich, stiff business people that are there to facilitate the eventual protest bound to break out. And of course, it does, and chaos ensues. And sadly, Mimi keeps buying smack from her dealer, and Roger finds her out and lost in the icy rain, having to rescue her sorry ass. And while this is going on, Angel becomes sicker and quickly dies from AIDS. And after the funeral, a fight breaks out. Roger heads all the way out to Santa Fe, but after 5 minutes, he decides he misses Mimi too damn much and heads right back to NYC. And I'd be fine with this and everything, but it happens so abruptly and it's so far away that it seems like a complete, utter waste of time to have even gone all the way to Santa Fe in the first place. And except for singing on top of a cliff, or as I call it, the Britney Spears cliff. It's the only reason I can even think of. There's a song called Santa Fe in this soundtrack. I think that's what it was good for. It's what a lot of these things are good for anyway. And of course, shortly after Roger comes back, Mimi has relapsed. You didn't really see much of her recovery in the first place, but she relapsed even further into that rabbit hole of addiction. And she's even closer to death before, and their friends have called 911, but it's taking too long for whatever reason. And Mimi's already fading away into oblivion. And of course, Roger takes out his guitar, and he's been working on this perfect song of his, and he finally gets it together and saves Mimi by the power of love. And I mean, you've heard that storyline before, probably, but there you go. It's here too. And I'm glad that Mimi is still alive after all that. But it's a bummer Angel didn't have that same kind of treatment. And I guess Mimi saw a white light, and Angel was there, and she looked good. And she said, "Turn around, girlfriend." I'm just torn on this movie. I know there's things wrong with it, but honestly, I love it so much. I really do. And of course, Mark, the buddy filmmaker, now has an entire film strip of the gang's experiences over the past year, in loving memory of Angel. And then the movie fades out in a montage of shots. And you know, my fun fact of this movie was it was a movie playing the first time I made out with someone. There you go. That's your fun fact. Moving on. So, do I have anything wrong about this movie or anything I didn't like about this movie? Of course I do! Look, I will defend this movie. It has a special place in my heart. However, there are most certainly some faults with the storyline and or the execution of this movie. And watching this movie critic, whose opinion I respect even when it's different from mine, made me question some of the things I love about this movie. And if you're looking for a revolutionary musical that truly sticks it to the man, this isn't it. This works better as a raw and unfiltered, year in the life kind of musical. I can see these people existing in real life, even with all the scummy and crummy decisions they make. The only character I think is a tad unrealistic is Angel. And they're just too shallow of a character to really feel like they're someone I'd run into the grocery store or in the bar. This movie doesn't feel revolutionary though. And it talks about people with AIDS, and it shows a few things they have to deal with, such as taking AZT and feeling a bit under the weather. But you don't really get the sense that many of these characters are suffering from the disease, especially Roger. And I guess in his defense, it's more he's on the HIV part of the process, but you'd think it'd afflict him a little more than it has currently. Maybe it's speaking to the more sinister nature of HIV/AIDS. I don't know. To be fair, and like I said, Roger is this way, and Mimi is also only HIV positive, which is still terrible, but they don't have full-blown AIDS yet. I mean, you'd think they'd have at least some, visible impact of this virus, and it's too late now to claim that's what the writer Jonathan Larson intended. And, I guess the original writer, passed away, right around the time that the musical came out, and so there was a whole lot of hoopla about that and coming out to the musical and watching it and supporting him. And a point that the movie critic made, which resonated with me, was that Rent positions itself as something that dresses down the phony baloney culture while simultaneously being its very embodiment. And it's hard to ignore once you've heard that. And additionally, it has a bit of a hypocritical tinge to it, especially in the main character of Mark. He's rather whiny, and instead of feeling sympathetic or sorry for him, you're really angry with him that he's not taking advantage of the opportunities presented right in front of him. And instead of showing the movie viewers that these people are terrible human beings, they're framed as being part of a romantic rebellious movement and that they're freedom fighters. And I would have empathized with Mark's plight if he wasn't such a terrible person. And additionally, there's two main conflicts about AIDS and the impact of the love triangle while making meaningful art. The two conflicts could intermingle, but here it just feels like you're mixing oil and water as opposed to, bourbon and water. I mean, that's where my Louisville comes in, okay? And finally, a point made that I agree with in criticism of this movie is that the Bohemians talk about how they don't mind living on the streets as long as they don't sell out. But when they interact with homeless people actually on the streets, they're callous and unappreciative of their plight. So I guess they're not going to help a brother out when they're in need. Okay then. And all that criticism aside, I do enjoy this movie. And I complained about Angel's lack of character because I enjoyed them and I wish they had more of a presence here. And I love the interactions between Mimi and Roger, and I adored Mimi's performance of Out Tonight. Marie made me laugh a few times, and Joanne was hilarious. And it's hard not to love Collins, though I can't say the same for Mark. And at times I could see Mark struggle and say, yeah, I've been there and it sucks. But unfortunately, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. The idea of selling out sucks. But you have to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to move back home, if that's a possibility, if you're going to become homeless, or if you're going to sell out and get that darn job, even if it compromises a few of your ideals. You have to choose something out of those three, and if you don't, I mean, you're going to have some mixture of the three, somehow, some way. And if Mark had sold out and then had been fired or let go, I would have understood his perspective and would have been able to give more of my heart to his character. However, as it stands, he's an awful human being. And my last thing to note about this movie is that the music is superb. It really sucked me in, and it made me enjoy my life and made me thankful for the things I do have. And there have been several months when I struggled to pay the rent, and I had to consider various kinds of avenues in terms of what to do with my life. I saw the obstacles present in this movie, and I was readily available to engage in their strife and in their joy. And there are also some lines in this movie that made me laugh my ass off, such as, "It's not that kind of movie, honey," and "If you're so wise, then tell me why do you need smack?" And, however, the best line for me was, "The opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation." It makes you really think. As for my grade for this movie, I recognize I have a bit of bias towards this movie in a positive way. I'm a sucker for musicals. I had good memories made with this movie. I really love the music. But after accounting for that, for me, my grade's a B+. There's certainly some issues with the source material. It may make it difficult for you to get fully invested, but you'll be invested 75% of the time. Yeah, it's not 100%, but 75% of the time you're really into it and getting into it, and you're saying, hey, either I get this, or I understand this, or I feel this, or you're so mad at them. Either way, you're engaging with the movie in the process. And I truly, wholeheartedly believe it's worth going out of your way to see. And so for me, out of the movies I've done on this set of reviews, I would put it like right in the middle in terms of like having a B+. And so I just really wanted to talk about this movie because it's been on my mind for a while. And I really have had times where I understood this movie more because I was in those struggles. And now that I've, moved on a bit and gone back to working full-time again, it's more like that hoity-toity, I don't know about these guys. But, sometimes when you're really down in the lows, you want something to build you up, or at least someone to look at and say, you know what, it could be a lot worse. And not only does that movie do that for me, but it also presents me a set of characters that I like the bulk of them, and they have fantastic music, and it makes me really want to go see the musical. Okay, well, I've been on this, search for a while for this movie and what to say about it, and it's finally here. And I hope you guys really get a chance to go see it if you haven't, and if you have, let me know what you think. And I would go check out Lindsay Ches. That's like the YouTube channel name, and she's Lindsay Ellis. She was the nostalgia chick once upon a time. So yeah, I'd go do that. She's a good person to check out, even if you don't agree with her. I mean, I don't really agree with her, half the time. So even though I can understand where she's coming from, and we can still have those different opinions and still, come to an understanding of like, yeah, you make a good point, and those things do suck, and I still love this movie, but I acknowledge that there are faults, and you may see that, and you may wonder if it's worthwhile, and I say it is, so go do it. Alright, well, this is pretty much all I had to say about it, and I will see you guys later, and I'm putting up a review of the Wonder Woman movie soon, and I'm excited, and you should be too. Alright, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.